Welcome to On My Way to Wealth, the podcast where busy Gen Xers can learn financial tips as they navigate life on their way to wealth. And now, please join your host, Luis Rosa.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of On My Way to Wealth. My name is Luis, and I'm your host. This is Financial Literacy Month, and who better to kick off the month than my good friend, Jedidiah Collins. He is an author. He is a creator of Your Money Vehicle, which is a super impactful financial literacy program that's going to be at every high school, man, in the next few years. That's the hope, man. So super excited to have him here. Thank you so much, Jed. Welcome.
Oh, brother, I could not be more excited to be here. We share so many passions, so many common traits in kind of how we approach things. And yes, that vision, that mission to empower high schools nationwide, that's something that we got to unite on. And it's something that is going to happen here in the next 5 years or so. So hopefully we get to be a bigger part of it.
Yeah, I love that, man, because that is certainly something I wish I had when I was in school. You know, I was just talking to a client. She's a doctor. And she said, man, you speak 3 languages. She's like, you speak Spanish, English, and money. And I was like, oh, man, kind of never thought about it that way. And she's like, yeah, this is just so complicated. And she's a doctor, right? And I was thinking like, man, think about people in high school that are just about to get into the real world, get that first paycheck, right?
Yeah. And I hate how intimidating we have made the industry, how much we have created a foreign language for the sole purpose to separate those who understand and those who do not, and sadly, take advantage of those who do not.
Yeah, agreed. And that's why I think what you're doing is so powerful. So before we get into the program, I want to just, for the audience to know a little bit more about you. I've heard that you've played some football in the past,
That it feels like a former life now. I used to have a ponytail and about 30 more pounds. So
oh, wow. Look at that.
It definitely was a different version of me, I guess. But yeah, brother, my story is interesting to some regards. I love introducing myself as a great failure. And people kind of get caught off guard with that. You played in the NFL, you've done some things, and it's the just humbling reality of everything I have succeeded at typically has started from a place of failing. And I think we need to kind of demystify that term and that word of failure. I love the quote, fail is first attempt in learning, FAIL, first attempt in learning. And I think we need to, especially being younger students of the language of money, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to have failures. But how do we find that roadmap to success? And so my mindset around this began being a fourth of 5 children growing up in California. My dad created a game called King for a Day. And in this, he would have the 3 boys, which we were the packed middle of the 5, go in the backyard and play basketball, one-on-one basketball. And the winner of the day got to walk off the court and be king, got to boss the other brothers around, got to tell us what to do, go do all the chores. And I vividly remember the 2 days I won. I mean, we played 1,000 times
Wow.
of King for a Day, and I know the 2 days that I walked off the court. My brothers were bigger, they were older, and they were better basketball players, obviously. And so it was that interpretation of, man, I got to go play this game again. In my head, in my heart, I wanted to win. In my head, I'm like, come on, I'm not going to beat these guys. So I changed my value. I changed my measurement in the idea that maybe it wasn't winning the king, but it really internalized to, did Jed get better? And did I improve? What can I do tomorrow that I learned today? And that mindset has stuck with me throughout high school, throughout college, throughout the NFL. Going into the National Football League, I got cut 13 times.
Wow.
And yet I became the number 1 player at my position, the best in the world. But it was 13 times that I failed at achieving that mark before I got to it. So I love kind of kicking off, introducing Jed as, I'm a father now. I've been a husband for 15 years. But I love seeing that every student, every young person, see yourself as a great failure. See yourself as, this is where I am now, but gosh, I'm going to only improve from here.
Yeah, I can appreciate that, man. Thank you for sharing that. First attempt in learning. I had never heard
You
that,
wrote
man. I
that
appreciate that.
down. There you
I
go.
wrote that down for sure, man. Thank you. And I love your perspective because when I think about, let's say, even lifting weights, right? You hear the term like, oh, you want to do X amount of reps to failure. And I love how you reframe the mindset around failure. Like, hey, this is not a bad thing necessarily because you are getting certain things out the way. I've learned one more way of how not to do this, right?
Yeah.
So you're looking at it. And, I commend you because, especially as you were younger, I feel like it would have been much easier for you to just give up. I mean, I can't even imagine having older brother just beat me consistently over and over and me just like, no, I'm going to get in there again. And
But I mean, and I love that you can translate it into so many different avenues. Look at weightlifting. Real strength doesn't come from reps. It comes from fatigue. It comes from pushing your muscle to a place it hasn't been before. And you ask yourself, who I love. I've got to work with a lot of college groups and college fraternities and organizations, and young men. I like, I can kind of vibe with them. Being a former athlete, I always bring two guys up on a stage, and I have them do a push-up contest, and I tell. Which guy, who do you think can do more? And one guy says, I can do 30. And the other guy says, I can do 15. I have the guy who says he can do more jump down. I say, do 10 perfect push-ups. And then I have the other guy go to failure. And everybody cheers on. And the first guy jumps up after 10. And everybody's like, all right, cool. We knew you could do that. And the other guy is still going and he's still struggling. And he said he could do 15 and he gets to 15 and the crowd gets a little bit higher. And all of a sudden he does 16. Everybody goes crazy and he does 17. And then he does 18 and then he falls and he fails. And you ask the crowd, all right, which guy did better? The one who did 10 perfect and jumped up and was totally complete and fine, or the one who went and failed? And everybody starts to see the mindset shift. And yes, his muscles got bigger, but it was truly the mind that pushed him beyond. Sure, the crowd helped, but it is that idea of he failed, but had a massively better day, better exercise, better moment. I love that visual. I love that energy. And, in today's world, I think mental health is one of the biggest kind of caveats that we need to address in ourselves and then see it in our students and in our children. And I think the biggest fear most people have, especially athletes, high level athletes, is they're afraid of failing, whether their exterior shows it or not. And so just kind of attacking that wall first on, head on, and saying, I know this is a fear, but how are we going to get around it? Why most people don't start with their money is they're afraid they don't speak the language. They're afraid they're going to fail. They're going to, fine, fail now so you can improve for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I love that. And, I also wanted to commend you just for your strength overall, man, because, just looking from the outside, I've known that you've gone through several transitions in your life. And, so you mentioned, right, you were cut 13 times. You had to transition eventually from being an NFL player into the business world. And then when you were in the business world, right before the pandemic, when I was looking up your bio and everything, you had mentioned you were just ready to get out there and showcase your ability to
Man.
public speak, right? And all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, everything shut down. But you're still at it, man, and you have an impact and that added value, man. How do you what were some of those lessons learned throughout those transitional periods for you?
Again, deal with failure. 3 months into my professional speaking business, the world told me there was no public speaking available. And so I had to pivot. And that's the other mindset around failing is I identifying, okay, this did not work. What is the next step? And that's that word pivot. So I think pivot is one of the biggest things. If you ever want to be an entrepreneur, Luis, you jumped out, you started your own. You can attest it ain't easy and it never goes directly as you planned. Your ability to pivot is going to be one of the most gritty resources and assets you can build. So as a entrepreneur, as a man, pivoting has been a massive takeaway from that time. But I also have learned some things as that entrepreneurial spirit kind of what what I have focused on as an entrepreneur has been the product. And one of my biggest messages and mindset shifts over these last few years has been, if you are going into business for yourself, you have to have two avenues. You have to build a product, but then you also have to build the distribution. And you can obsess over making your thing a little bit better, but at the end of the day, you got to market it and you got to sell it. And the marketing and sales of who it's for and maybe who is buying it may be different, but you really got to answer that question of, how are these people going to hear about me? Who is this for? And what value is going to come for them specifically? So that entrepreneurial mindset of niching down, understanding who you're trying to serve, and then truly identifying the product and the distribution as two different sides of having a successful business has really been a neat one. And another takeaway that I got to come across in my personal journey going into an education technology company is the massive difference between content and curriculum. And you're a creator, I'm a creator. We can create content, but to truly build around a platform and a program that says you're not just going to consume content, you are going to go through a program, you are going to have a resource, you're going to have a teacher or somebody direct your journey, you're going to have a workbook and some way to kind of track your journey on your own, you're going to have assessments and tools. That has been a really neat kind of journey within myself of, I was so excited to create content, but to truly look at the best format for changing education to empowerment, going from I've learned to I have done, has been building that curriculum and really looking at our guide, which is our teacher, how much we can support them. So, these last few years has led me down paths and avenues I never foresaw myself going in. If you would have met somebody in 2019, 2020 and said, Jed's going to go run an ed tech company, they would have laughed at you, including myself. But it is a combination of passions and perseverance and seeing a problem that I really wanted to solve.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate the distinction between content and curriculum. I know that you had, I saw on your website that about 3.5 million graduating high school seniors by 2027 or so are going to be required to either have passed or taken some sort of financial literacy course. What impact do you hope that will have?
So this is what's been so neat is, originally people told me, don't go into financial literacy. There's not a business there. There's not a way to make money. The market has formed. We are seeing states right and left pass a mandate to graduate high school. You must go through a class like this because it is that missing gap. It is the biggest life skill students need. Luis, I hate to say this, but if it continues that students learn without applying, no change will happen. And that is a really tough pill to swallow. And that is that separation between education and empowerment. I have learned and I know and am confident in what I'm going to go do. What I see Money Vehicle and what these programs that, there are other good ones out there is twofold. If we truly have an empowering financial education program, we're able to help students avoid that first mistake. You know it, I know it, whether it's a credit card, even banking, insurance, taxes. Everybody looks at topics as a certified financial planner and can point to countless clients who have made that first mistake. If we can educate so people are aware of and can avoid that first mistake, I think we would have a tremendous, tremendous shift in the consumer's mindset. The second one is, again, if I had a dime for everybody and you started out with it, if I had only known this earlier, how much of a difference it would make. We all hold as students, as teenagers, college students, whether or just students in general. Maybe I didn't go to college, maybe I went straight into the workforce. You have an even bigger advantage and asset, and it's time. If we can get people to simply look that it is not how brilliant you are, but it is how soon you start. It's not timing the market, it's time in the market. If we can get people to understand why that concept works and see the biggest advantage of the time value of money being time, I think that is really what the success rate for these programs will be. Are you still going to make mistakes in taxes? Are you still going to try to understand insurance documents? Sure. But if you get started in a plan, you get started in investing, things like inflation aren't going to destroy your plan because you have assets working for you. And so I think the biggest takeaway is just going to be, if everybody could start 1 year, 5 years, 10 years earlier investing in themselves and in their future, our world will see a big change. One that is still going to have problems and hurdles, but one that is going to be a better place.
Without a doubt. Yeah, it's so true. I feel like time is the most important thing in the time value of money concept. And when I think about it as a high school student, it's like a clean slate, man, like blank canvas that you can design, right? You're not into debt yet. You don't owe a ton of credit cards or student loans, right? Like if you learn the concepts and apply them early, I mean, investing in yourself, like you're saying, right? Automating your finances, all the little things that we like to teach, but ultimately when they're put together, man, they have so much impact. The world will be a better place, you know. And in general, too, if you think about it, there'll be more money available for charitable contributions and all kinds of stuff. So it's a compound interest in a sense.
And I mean, the philanthropic impact that it can have. You look at the number one concern or cause of divorce is usually financial. If we get better education and better planning going early on, let's remove that one. And that helps with our marriages and our families. And then you do look like the number one struggle of a high school age student today, which honestly, we're about the same age. Back when I was in high school, mental health was just not a thing. And I don't think we were just before social media, so it wasn't as impressing from the outside external forces. But you look at the mental health side, and if you can remove some of that financial stress, financial concern, financial insecurity, I think it will also impact, your mental wellness. I don't think financial wellness is the priority, but it definitely bleeds into other aspects of our overall wellness. And so, yeah, it's a definitely a few pronged problem, but I think there is a solution out there.
Yeah, I think that is a great point. Social media has definitely had a compound effect on people's insecurities, especially self-esteem and finances, right? Because you basically get to see most people just highlight reel, as I like to say, out there, right? They just the best meals, the vacations, the nice car, right? You don't know what's behind that, or the debt they're in, and who knows.
And if we could only remind ourselves that, and I will tell you, I mean, we're on here to have a conversation. I have fallen victim to that twice in the past month. In the month of March, I have had somebody call me who I have seen on trips, happy, smiling with their bride and their wife, and they're separating. They called me and they're separating. And I go, but on social media, you guys look so happy. On the other side of that, I have watched a company grow and explode and look like they are just absolutely dominating. And I look at it insecurely of like, whoa, if my marriage or if my business were doing as good as this gentleman whose business I thought was doing, he calls me and same result. They're going under, they're going out of business. And I in this month, I have really challenged myself to see that funny mirror that social media allows you to look through. And I've honestly gone back and I've met people at conferences, or I've met, connections, and people come up to me and they're like, Jed, you're doing amazing. I go, oh man, business is really hard. Like, what are you talking about? They're like, well, from social media land, it looks like you're, and I go, huh. So I'm also a part of the problem. So I will admit to that. But it is, I wish there was. And when we find a social media outlet that encourages the reality and encourages the opposite of just your wins, I think that's $1 billion business in itself. I don't know. It would be kind of depressing. Maybe we call it the news, but like, I think if we went on and we're like, no, I just got kicked in the teeth. This was tough. This was a tough Wednesday. I think people would connect with that.
Yeah, Thank you for being so vulnerable, by the way. I feel the same, on both ends, so I sometimes I scroll, yeah, and I do see what you're talking about, right? I'll see a colleague, and I'm like, man, like we start our businesses around the same time. Well, they have less in the industry than I do, and they just seem to be doing like so much better, right? So I tend to not spend too much time, even though I do a lot of content creation, but on the consumption side, I probably scroll maybe 3 to 5 up, right, or down, whatever, and that's
Get
it.
out.
Like I just end it, right? Hit the like, whatever, because you can go down that path. And then on the receiving end, like I've gotten some accolades and whatnot, and people might look at that like, wow, you must be doing great, man. And so some of those things they just make you feel good, right? But in reality, like you said, man, when you look at the struggle, what it's like to be a solopreneur in my case, and then grow that, it's a lot, and I don't feel like the success that some people might see me as. There's definitely that disconnect there. So thank you for being vulnerable. They didn't want to leave you out there all by yourself.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. I wanted to ask you then, actually I want to go back a little bit since we're on this topic, back to your professional playing days. I read an article, for example, I think it was Chad Johnson that said that he saved money by living in the training facility and wearing fake jewelry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was pretty interesting to me. And I would imagine that you probably saw. The reason I'm bringing this up is because I think a lot of people might feel like having more money is the answer if they're feeling like they're struggling, where it's not necessarily, right? Because one of the things you and I had talked about was when people have more money, sometimes they raise their lifestyle to just meet that new level of income, right? So I would imagine you probably saw, right, the guys that were making the big paychecks just buying out the bar and the nice cars, right? This
and it's an endless problem, and we get to see it firsthand with professional athletes because they are 24 and just got $2 million or $20 million. And it is that lifestyle creep question that we all face. Everybody tells me, oh, if I was an NFL player and I had $1 million, like my problems would be solved. If I just got that bonus or if I got this raise, my problems would be solved. And there is some truth to that. Like there is no denying that there is a bar and minimum of the amount of money you need to live. But above that, there is this fictitious idea of our dream in our mind that says, "Oh, well, it's at that next corner. Like once I get to that, once I get 6 figures, once I get that." And what we really need to start to interpret and identify is two things. One of the greatest financial literacy quotes I've ever heard is, "If your outflow exceeds your income, your upkeep will be your downfall. If your outflow, how much you spend, exceeds your income, how much you make, your upkeep, managing your lifestyle, will be your downfall, your plan being ruined." And where guys mistake NFL players, professional athletes, this quote is they can live like kings today because they're making king's ransom. This is king's money. The catch is the day they retire, their outflow immediately exceeds their income. And that upkeep leads to them going broke and their downfall. And so where I really love to see the modern day athlete being educated, part of this NIL movement, I've said the greatest, caveat to why it's so cool is it makes you become a smarter financial person earlier. If you're introduced to it at 18, that's better than being introduced to it at 22, going back to that time idea. The other NIL thing is everybody has told us, hey, be a businessman, be a businessman, be a businessman. NIL has paused and said in Jay-Z's quote, "I'm not a businessman, I'm a business, man." And so looking at yourself as a business, the business of you, being that solo entrepreneur, being self-employed, doesn't matter where you work. Even if you're an employee, you still have the business of you. So I love that. But we need to get outside of this notion that our happiness is around that next pay raise. One, the moment you get it, you instinctively, because of social media and because of how damn good marketing is these days, you're going to buy something. I promise you that. You're not going to get another $5,000 and not purchase something. Your hotel on the travel is going to get a little nicer. Your car is going to get a little nicer. Your house eventually is going to get a little nicer. And if your financial plan and let me rephrase that. If you think your happiness is around more, if I get more money, I will be happy. If I get more, you're never going to be. And I think the biggest revelation I had getting the fortune to be a professional athlete is sitting down with guys who have $70 million in their 20s and realizing, A, they're not necessarily happier than me, the undrafted guy getting cut a dozen times. And B, they continue to look at it. And I've had multiple guys tell me this. You're in the middle of a contract negotiation. You're arguing between 75 and $72 million. What's the difference? Like, life is good. You should. And they look at you and they go $3 million. Like, it's the ego of, well, I want to be the highest paid this, or I want that. If more is where you think you're going to find your plan, you're always going to be wanting. And I think a big lesson here is we want money to give us something, but why I call the company Money Vehicle is money is not the destination. $1 million is not what you want. You want something that you think those monies are going to provide for you. And so if we can shift and kind of move past the money side and see money as just the vehicle that is going to take us somewhere, now we get to really identify with what is our happiness surrounded by and how do we start to check those boxes.
I love that, man. Yeah, money's just that resource. I love the concept of the vehicle. So yeah, let's talk about more about your money vehicle. I know there's a book, there's a financial literacy program. So for those of us that don't know, like, how can it be accessed? Is it only through the school? Can you buy the book separately? If I'm a consumer, can I access it? Do I have to go through some sort of school curriculum? Uh, tell me everything about the program.
Yeah. So it's for anyone who's getting started on their financial journey. We talked about it earlier. Financial literacy is a foreign language. It's literacy. Are you literate in the world of finances, in the world of money? I was not when I started. Luis, I got to imagine you were not when you started. And so it's the start of that journey. It's how do you start speaking this language and how do you start building a plan? Is Money Vehicle for, people who are 20 years into their journey and looking to retire? No. We're looking for people who are just receiving their first paychecks. You have your first paycheck. Congratulations. Now what? This is supposed to be that first mile of your money. And again, I love the puns and we play into the analogy quite a bit. So looking at this, it's for people beginning. We have 12 topics and 12 stops. As a certified financial planner, you understand the vast topics that money is going to cover. And so where we broke it down is how do we connect that to an analogy around a vehicle in a car, something high school students or 20-year-olds will understand. So very quickly, I'll break down our topics that we cover. You begin with your income. That income represents your car keys. You need your keys before you even get into the car. And believe me, as you know, it's always nice to have a spare set of car keys. So having two or multiple sources of income is also going to be a benefit. Then you sit down in the driver's seat, you take ownership, you set the GPS. That GPS is your goals. We call them rich goals, reachable, individual, controllable, and happy goals. Then you got to make the car move. That's your gas and your brake pedal. That gas and brake pedal represents the time value of money. Yes, we get into the beautiful idea of the eighth wonder of the world, compound interest, but you also understand what is the brake? What is debt? How do interests work against you? Once you're moving, you grab the steering wheel. That steering wheel represents your cash management system. We utilize the money buckets. As you start moving, you start asking, well, where's going to be the first safe place to park my car? That's going to be your garage. A garage represents your financial institution in your money vehicle. What is a bank, a credit union? Where are you going to park your cash? Then you look at the first mistake most students make in their vehicle. That's going to be not checking the oil. The oil in your money vehicle is going to be your credit cards, and your credit score. Yes, they can cause damage, but if handled wisely, they're going to also make your machine run even more efficient. Finally, we get under the hood, the engine, what everybody wants to start talking about, the powerful roar. That's your investment. We summarize our entire investment philosophy in a financial literacy quiz in a sentence: be average, index. If you understand what those three words mean, you are speaking the language. Then you start looking at how you transfer risk. Well, in a car, you're going to have a seatbelt, you're going to have an airbag. In your money vehicle, you're going to have insurance. So starting to look at how to remove hazards to your wealth. Then you got to set the car alarm. And this is one that a lot of people didn't really understand around cybersecurity 4 or 5 years ago. Today, I haven't had a single student say, why are we learning about cybersecurity? Everybody kind of gets that car alarm today. Then we overlook the roads, the police, the things on the journey that we just take for granted. We call our society choice or our tax system. Got to learn how to file your taxes, respond to all those social media posts around why we didn't learn that in school. Last but not least, you look at your money vehicle, you look at your actual vehicle and you want to make it more efficient, you make it a hybrid. You look at your money vehicle, want to make it more efficient, you make it a tax advantaged account. So we go into 401ks, IRAs, and the powerful Roth tool. Last but not least, you got to understand how to review your pay stubs. And we call those our financial tune-ups, and how you're going to go check your car moving forward. So we really try to frame that analogy, piece it together to where it's digestible and it's told through a story that all students can understand. To answer your question, and again, I can jump on a soapbox and ramble. Yes, buy the book. Very soon, by the time this comes out, we will have a Spanish published version of the book that you can go and buy and read and use and implement. We also have 1-hour courses available on our website. And if this is a teacher or a student that's saying, why isn't this in my high school or college? We also work with high schools and colleges nationwide to deliver the curriculum.
I love it. Let me tell you, I'm fascinated by the analogy. I mean, to me, it's just incredible. Everything you just described, from just literally the car keys all the way up to parking. And I mean, it was amazing. I don't know how long it took you to come up with all that, but to me, it's fascinating.
I look at what I'm good at. I'm good at being silly and telling stories. Building a business and diving into Excel templates, that's not Jed's strength. But that creativity side, that is what I love. And I think that's what our students really connect with is, I am not trying to overwhelm you, impress you, or sell you. I am simply trying to make this language simple enough that you walk away and go, all right, that made more sense. Our job here is done.
Yeah. And, I love the fact that you mentioned how it's okay to make mistakes, going back to the whole failure thing, because it's not forever. You asked me about mine. Yeah. Like I have them on my website. I tell people, one of the first mistakes I remember making when I went to college was getting into a credit card. At the time, I didn't even have a job. It was freshman year. This is before the internet. Makes me sound super old, but I went to the bookstore on campus to buy my books for that semester, and they literally had like a table with like a credit card rep, and they had the credit card applications like already like pre-wrapped inside the books. So like you had no choice, but you couldn't avoid them, right? I didn't know about compound interest and how it could work negatively against you when you're a borrower. And yeah, they approved me for a $250 credit limit in 1997 with no job and no income, right? And I maxed that bad boy out right away. And then 6 months later, guess what? They increased my credit limit to 500, and I maxed that out. I remember I went to Cancun in sophomore year, and I didn't have the money. I used my credit card, right? And I paid for my trip, which is like, it was this all-inclusive package with the airfare, hotel, whatever, and that was the most expensive trip because it took me years to pay it off. I didn't pay it off that semester or the one after, right? And they know what they're doing, right? There's a lifetime value on you as a consumer. Not to sound, like a conspiracy theorist. There's just business, right? They look at you like,
That's
hey,
marketing.
Yeah, it's marketing, right? So guess what? I still have that credit card that I got in 1997.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a great tool for me though, because yes, did I pay a ton of interest at first? Sure, I was in debt for a while, but now that I know how to use it, credit history, for example. I mean, I have a credit card from 1997, right? Like, imagine the impact that has positively on my credit score. And I've been able to manage that properly where I no longer carry a balance and so on, right? So there are smart ways of doing it, like you were mentioning. A lot of times you hear in the news, there's a lot of financial, I don't even know what to call them, but let's call them, just some famous people that are like dead set against, like, oh, you shouldn't use credit cards. Like, yeah, some people probably need to refrain from that. But I feel like what you're building is providing people the tools to then develop those good habits and make informed decisions where, yes, they could take advantage of things that are double-edged swords. Like, yeah, can a credit card get you in trouble? Absolutely, right? But can you use it properly to build your credit and manage your life? Sure, right? So thank you for sharing all
And
that.
do you see, you work with, on your path to wealth, you are looking at first generation wealthy individuals on a daily basis, doctors, lawyers,
Yeah.
doesn't matter, very intelligent people who still see credit and still see debt as a negative. Do you see that as part of one of your passions is, again, getting people to see past maybe their preconceived notions, maybe how their family grew up believing and seeing it, and not saying you're wrong, but educating on the pros and cons of this tool, really getting people to see it as that tool?
Absolutely. Yeah. I get a lot of people that are usually the first in their families of many. It could be the first to have graduated college or the first one to get a, let's call it a quote unquote real job in the US where, they're getting certain benefits like 401ks, and maybe they're the first ones to buy a life insurance policy. Like even myself, right? I'm one of 6 children. My parents never even owned a car, and they came from the Dominican Republic to the US, and they couldn't teach us the US financial system because they themselves never had a 401k or life insurance, nothing, right? Like they didn't know, they ended up owning credit cards later in their adult life after we learned about them and show them how maybe they needed one to pay certain bills because they were literally walking up to the pharmacy to buy money orders to pay like their electric bill or something.
Wow.
So I do encounter that a lot. And there's a lot of misconceptions that I also work with clients to overcome, because there's a lot of money trauma just based on how they grew up. And some are general. Like, for example, some people feel like you might have heard people that say, hey, if you're renting, you're throwing away money, right? Um, Perhaps, but not necessarily the case because as you very well know, opportunity cost is that what are you doing with the difference, right? So if my rent's 1,500 and my mortgage is 4,000, so, and I choose to rent, but I'm investing that other 2,500, then maybe you're not worse off. So it depends what you're doing with it, right? So overcoming a lot of those things, fears, anxieties, money traumas that came from growing up. There's people that have been through similar circumstances and they act completely differently. For example, I have clients who didn't have much growing up, and that has fueled them to say, hey, I want my children to have everything I didn't have. And that causes an issue because they have the means for it, but then they're overspending in a lot of things, just saying yes to everything, right? As a result, because I want my kids to have everything I didn't have. Then I have people who went through that very same thing, and their mentality is, hey, I didn't have much growing up. I think that builds character. I'm not going to give everything to my children either. So
Yeah.
they should struggle the way I did.
I
It's fascinating to me. So it never makes it boring because there's so many different individual circumstances that I deal with.
and there are, and that's the beauty and the takeaway is money doesn't always lead to happiness and success. There are endless different avenues to achieve that, and to each their own. They get to choose that path.
Yeah, absolutely. Personal finance is personal. You know, to going back to the analogy of your money vehicle, like you set the destination, so it's not for me to tell you where to go. You set where you want to drive and what makes you happy. So I'm going to put all your links in the show notes, but for those listening now, where can we find you online, the book, the curriculum, social media, and so on?
Book is on Amazon. Your Money Vehicle. Go download it now. Again, going to be in Spanish here very, very soon. So excited about that.
Muy bien.
No, bien. And if you want to check out our website, yourmoneyvehicle.com will allow you to get access to the program. Again, 1 hour certification on taxes, insurance, investing, cash management, banking, things that you need to get started in a very digestible manner. How we're going to teach and tell you not only what to do, but how to go do it. Follow me, find me on LinkedIn, TikTok, social media at Jedidiah Collins or the fullback of finance. That
Love
is
that one.
That is the slogan I've come with, and it combines my two worlds and two passions of being an NFL player and a certified financial planner.
Love it, man. Before I let you go, I have one more question. This one is basically, I want you to think of yourself, you're in an elevator with a complete stranger, and they did not listen to the episode, right? So you're going to be on the with a short, pretty short ride, maybe 30 seconds, going to the fifth floor, whatever. They don't know your name. They don't know your website. They don't know your book or your program. What are some things that, if they ask you, say, hey, what are some things that you know now that you wish you knew then, or just any general life advice? It doesn't even have to be about money that you would like to pass on to the audience.
Love that question. General life advice. I mean, my daughter turns 10 this week, today, actually.
Oh, wow. Happy birthday to her.
Best general, thank you.
Man, when did you have it? When you were 12?
Feliz cumpleaños. I mean, come on. There we go. I'm working. I would say life advice as a parent, just because I am coming up on a decade of being one, they are going to see you more than hear you. And that is something that I've really started to understand. I think that's the world and that's life in general. Yes, you can say the right thing, but people are going to see what you do more than what you say. I will circle back to that notion we were discussing earlier. If more is your only goal in money or in life, you will never be satisfied. So don't make more your goal or your solution. Tell me your tangible plan. And then the last one is going to bring it full circle. Money is a vehicle. It is something that you will use. It is something that is going to work for you. Employ your money. Make it go to work for you. Money is lazy. If you tell it not to do anything, it won't. So if you can find a time and a place where your money is working for you and you then get to go chase a passion, I think that is the definition of financial freedom. But until money is working for you, you're never going to be free. And until you speak this language of money, you're never really going to understand how to make all of this come to fruition. So start by empowering yourself, invest in you. You are your greatest asset. And take advantage and drive your money vehicle.
Very well said, my brother. Thank you. And the good news is you don't have to do it alone. Go to yourmoneyvehicle.com. That is a great place to start to get all of the fundamentals that you need as you get started on your journey. So thank you very much, Jed. This has been a pleasure and an honor, brother.
Hey, I love watching you on your journey. You are killing it, at least according to social media.
According to social media.
But enjoy the day, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you as well, man. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. As always, if you have any questions, send me an email, luis@onmywaytowealth.com, and stay tuned for other great episodes during Financial Literacy Month. Thank you. Thank you for listening to On My Way to Wealth. If you have any questions, please send me an email at luis@onmywaytowealth.com. The information provided here is for information and education purposes only. The opinions expressed herein are solely those of myself, unless otherwise specifically cited. Material presented is believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations are made by my firm or myself about other parties' information or accuracy or completeness. All information or ideas provided should be discussed in detail with a financial advisor, accountant, or legal counsel prior to implementation. Thank you.